Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is now getting blasted for spending more time hyping up the U.S. military than doing his job to bring the Iran war to a halt. Retired General Mark Hertling appeared on MS Now and pointed out that Rubio's responsibility is to engage in diplomacy with other nations, not tell the U.S. military how great the U.S. troops are.
Quit starting your sentences with, "We've got the greatest military in the world." The military knows what they can and can't do. And what they can't do is end a war. That's up to the politicians. And to continue to open your sentences like Secretary Rubio just did with how great the military is a waste of time.
At a ceremony at the U.S. State Department, Rubio claimed the Iranian military is being eviscerated and that the world will be a safer place thanks to the actions of U.S. forces.
To remind the American people of why it is that the greatest military in the history of the world is engaged in this operation. It is to destroy the ability of this regime to launch missiles, both by destroying their missiles and their launchers, destroy the factories that make these missiles, and destroy their Navy.
Now, never mind that Rubio's focus on destroying Iranian missiles and Navy ships is different from Trump justifications about regime change and ending Iran's nuclear program. Rubio repeatedly hyped U.S. forces and praised their bravery and skills.
The military, the United States military, the men and women in uniform are conducting an extraordinary operation. There are not a lot of cameras down there covering what they're doing, as opposed to some of the other images that you may see from some of the cities and capitals nearby. But I want everyone to know your military is getting the job done. And every single day, this regime in Iran has less missiles, has less launchers, their factories work less, and their Navy is being eviscerated.
Marco Rubio never served in the U.S. military, and those who did serve, including General Hertling, say the comments by the Secretary of State are condescending and reek of inappropriate bravado.
The military, for the most part, is pretty humble. There's not hubris involved. We don't need other people telling folks how good we are. We know what we can do, but we also know what we can't do. And that's the ground we're in right now. So I can say that. I make that recommendation to all politicians. Knock it off. Worry about what you've got to do to end wars.
Worry about what you've got to do to end wars. Well, what the Secretary of State is supposed to do is engage in diplomacy and talks that could bring the conflict to an end. Instead, Marco Rubio seems to think his role now is to be a cheerleader for the U.S. military and a public advocate for the ongoing bombing and strikes against Iran. To be fair, President Trump may be demanding that all members of his cabinet keep praising the war and the skills of U.S. troops, or perhaps Marco Rubio sees a political opportunity for himself to be aligned with the U.S. military power and the success of U.S. forces. Either way, the military community is clearly miffed at the way many politicians, including Marco Rubio, are basking in the U.S. military's might. For years, analysts have said that a war between the United States and Iran would be one-sided militarily. Thanks to the superiority of the U.S. forces, the U.S. equipment, the intelligence, and the firepower to military conflict, the United States is second to none. And the U.S. has repeatedly overwhelmed Iranian forces. We've seen it from the start of this war, and we saw it a year ago when the U.S. bombed Iranian nuclear facilities. The question, though, has never been about whether the U.S. military could dominate the skies over Iran, destroy key Iranian military facilities, and annihilate the Iranian Navy. The question has always been, what will that accomplish? Would it really trigger regime change? Would it usher in power to the oppressed citizens and lead to a secular democratic government in Iran? And how would the United States facilitate such dramatic changes after knocking out Iran's military forces? On that part, the plan for what comes next after U.S. military action, the Trump administration seems clueless. There have been no discussions about high-level talks, negotiations, or diplomacy. There's only been some vague public threats by Donald Trump to put U.S. troops on the ground in Iran, because even Donald Trump knows that airstrikes and bombing attacks alone cannot bring fundamental changes to local and state governance. So, in the absence of any concrete or specific plan about what comes next after the U.S. military attacks on Iran, Marco Rubio and other Trump sycophants are left talking about the only thing that does seem great, and that is the skills and the power of the U.S. forces. But as General Hertling and other former and current military commanders have said, The U.S. military knows they are great. They don't need politicians praising them. The troops need to know that the politicians are doing their job to conclude this war or transition to something that looks like peace and enable the forces to come back to the United States. And on that count, the U.S. military is again seeing something that is one-sided. The troops are doing all that they can do militarily, and the political leaders are offering over-the-top praise and admiration instead of explaining what is coming next. Did you know that the big wireless carriers like Verizon and AT&T made over $18 billion in profit last year? How? By overcharging you for unlimited data, most of which you probably aren't even using. But what if you could get paid to use your phone less and only pay for the data you do use? Well, with Noble Mobile, you can. For just $50 a month on their No Bull plan, you get unlimited data, and whatever data you don't use, you get cash back right in your pocket. People who switch to Noble can save an average of $500 to $1,000 a year. It's a no-brainer. And by switching to Noble, you're directly supporting TYT and our mission of bringing you honest, independent news. So give Noble a try and make the switch today. Scan the QR code on the screen now or visit go.tyt.com/plan. That's go.tyt.com/plan. By the way, the Trump administration's Department of Homeland Security has been slapped with a massive lawsuit now after agents assaulted and detained 2 American citizens in North Carolina.
No, we're not detained. Nope.
Near Charlotte, North Carolina, that is Edwin Godinez and his half-brother, Polis.
It's still recording already, and you are not allowed to do this.
Both men are U.S. citizens and were born in the United States.
Turn the phone off.
But ICE is arresting them for the alleged crime of filming federal agents while Latino. Check out that video at the link below. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.